I echo what you have just said. And in fact, you've made my task a little easier. So let me go through the presentation that I have. Here is, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. So just let me, by way of introductory remarks, let me just say that we thank, again, I echo what Mansi and Pramod have said, thank Google and NASSCOM for their support on what I think is a topic that will have profound implications for the future of the Indian economy. And I think Pramod has just outlined that. Let me go through the report in some detail. I won't take too much time. I encourage all of you to please read the report, share your feedback. This is the first time this sort of a report has been done for India, looking at the implications of AI on the Indian economy. So, just to get the quick definitions out of the way, AI has been around for a long time. So there have been cycles of AI growth and sort of decline. There's been hype, and I think there's been a lot of underestimation of the potential of AI as well, along with the hype. It's been like a pendulum, from going from one extreme to the other. But the definition, coined in the 1950s, simply said it is the development of computing systems to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as speech recognition, visual perception, and decision making. And I think modern definitions build on that. And as I said, AI has been through several cycles of excitement and deep disappointment, what the literature in AI calls as AI winters. There have been episodes of AI systems defeating the world chess champion, the world Go champion. There have been sort of positive moments for AI, but there's been, as I said, dormancy as well in the field of AI. And suddenly today, we see a lot of interest in AI, and it's not surprising why we see a lot of interest in AI again today, because science has made a lot of progress. There are smarter algorithms out there. There's massive amounts of data that is being produced, and hardware, of course, has got a lot more power. There's vast computing power that has been developed. And according to some people, the Apollo 11 that went to the moon could be powered by a simple smartphone today, rather than the mainframe computers that was used at that time. As Pramod said, one views AI as, so many things today, as the new frontiers, the new big thing. But I think essentially we must view AI, as we've done in the report, as Pramod mentioned, we must view it as a general purpose technology, as the steam engine, as electricity. As Sundar Pichai, the head of Google, has said, it's probably more profound than electricity and fire. But then one has to also be sort of cautious about the applications. And Stephen Hawking has said that it could be the best or the worst invention of human civilization. And Andrew Ng says that he probably finds it difficult to imagine that AI will not transform every sector, every industry, every firm over the next couple of years. I think all of this underlies the point that AI is a general purpose technology. It is going to have immense impacts of economic growth. It is going to have immense impacts on living standards. And I think the premise for this report, the trigger for this report, as we were speaking with Sanjay and Pramod before this, is that what is it that it can do to economic growth, given that it is a general purpose technology? And that was the main purpose of this study. And this is, I think, the first time that anybody has looked at the economic implications, tried to develop a number that sort of manifests the impacts of AI on economic growth. It's not that this literature does not exist. It exists, of course. But let me, before I get into the results, let me also say that, often it is said about the Chinese economy, that the Chinese economy will become old before it becomes rich. And I think it sort of gives you some level of concern about how they're going to sort of secure, how they're going to curate social security architecture so that one, as they become old, they're also able to look after the livelihoods of the old. And I think if you sort of, permit this metaphor, I think what India is going to become data rich before it becomes economically rich. And I'll just park this thought at the moment, and I'll come back to this in the conclusions. We are generating enormous, just like the world is, India is generating enormous amounts of data. We are, I think, a data abundant country. And if you believe the old trade theories of the Nobel laureates before us, including, Heckscher-Ohlin models, or even the more sort of Samuelson models, that countries that are abundant in a particular resource will develop a competitive advantage in products that are intensive in that resource. So if you look at those trade theories, and if you agree to the proposition that we are making in this report that India is a data abundant country, then India should be able to become competitive in data intensive products or data intensive services. I'll park this for the moment and I'll come back to this at a later stage. But as I said, the objective of this report was to see what are the economic impacts that AI is having on economic growth. And as I said, I encourage all of you to read the report. But we started from the premise that the only sustainable way for countries to grow, and this is a part of the literature that was developed by another Nobel laureate called Robert Solow, the only way countries can grow in a sustainable manner is to have improvements in what is called total factor productivity growth. Otherwise, increases in inputs like labor, capital, materials, etc., are all subject to diminishing returns, so that the only sustainable way is to have improvements in either innovation or total factor productivity. So we ask ourselves the question, what is the impact that AI can have on total factor productivity, and therefore, through total factor productivity, what are the impacts that AI can have on economic growth? That is the simple, basic question. But as I was discussing with Sanjay, while the question may be simple, and the conduit is total factor productivity from AI to GDP, the analysis is not as easy. It's a complex analysis, but we've sort of managed to do this. And we've sort of we've sort of addressed and we've been hindered by some data challenges. But ultimately, we got the result, and the result is looking very positive and very good and significant. We measure AI as investments in software, databases, and computer machinery, and the estimates show that a unit increase in AI intensity, and AI intensity in the report is simply the ratio of AI investments that I've defined above, which is investment in software, database, and computer machinery, to total sales. AI investments to total sales is the parameter of interest for us. A unit increase in that can result in 2.5% increase in India's GDP in the immediate term. This is the headline result of this report. I encourage all of you to look at that, to think about this, and to sort of examine it and scrutinize it and see whether we can improve this result or not. But this result is profound. This result is extremely important for the Indian economy. A unit increase in AI measured the way we measure it, AI intensity to total scales, will have a bang for the buck in terms of GDP increase. And that amount is 2.5%. Now, the question policymakers have to ask themselves is, can we wait for the market to deliver? Because AI will grow. As it is growing in the West, as it is growing in India, it will grow. There will be a business as usual. But given this result, I feel that government should intervene very, very quickly and positively to ensure the democratization of AI across sectors, both social and private. And I'm happy to say that some amount of this is beginning to happen, because India, as I said, has a competitive advantage, a potential competitive advantage in AI, not only given our AI strength as software, computer engineers, etc. All of that is a given, but the fact that we are generating so much data almost every day, and it's very large amounts of data, and we can get a competitive edge in that. So we know that, if you look at the history of technology and the evolution of technology and the diffusion of technologies across countries, they are subject to what economists call market failure, which means they will happen, but they will happen with a lag, the markets will not readily embrace this technology, either because what Pramod said right in the beginning, because it is expensive and there's a fear of whether it will succeed or not. So the government has to absorb some of that risk upfront, because it has to cushion, the developers of AI, either to reduce the risk or to share the risk and to put in a lot of effort and resources into the development of AI. That is basic sort of the result of this study, is that it delivers impacts, AI delivers impacts, business as usual will perhaps take too long, government intervenes and tries to short circuit the implications of AI in the Indian economy. And we know that 7,000 crores or $1 billion are going to have been approved for expenditure on artificial intelligence programs. And that, according to the results of our study, could translate into spillover benefits of about 3.2% of GDP. You can see immediately that 7,000 crores is having this impact. And if we scale this up, and we can have even larger impacts. And the moment you get scale, you get economies of scale, the network effects would mean that our number for AI could actually be an underestimate. So this is the sort of big result of our study. So the other sort of important thing to note is that often people say that even in the West, the impact of AI is happening largely in big companies that are able to embrace AI, like in search engines, like targeted ads or user recommendations, and we are beginning to see impacts in other sectors as well. So the question is, have we missed the bus? And I think, no, we haven't missed the bus, not at all, because there are several, very encouraging signs that we found in our case studies that we did. So we complemented the macro analysis, the econometric analysis with case studies, and the team actually went and interviewed, and the team consisting of Mansi and Shashank, who must be listening, Shashank, who worked on this report, has moved on to greener pastures and sitting in foreign country doing a PhD, and I'm sure he's there listening to us. So thank you, Shashank, for helping with not only the report, but doing all these case studies. And of course, Mansi has been a pillar during this exercise, who introduced the panelists. And I think all of them spent a lot of time gaining knowledge, gaining sort of insights into what AI companies in India are doing. And they interviewed 13 AI companies across different sectors like law enforcement, healthcare, banking, finance, agriculture, manufacturing. And the interesting thing about the case studies is that they're not only in sort of usual commercial kind of applications, but they're enormous applications, especially in an emerging market like India. They're enormous applications in the social sector, as Sanjay mentioned, in flood control, in his sort of webinar sort of discussion, and Pramod reinforced that. But also there are a number of applications in healthcare. It's not going to, as Pramod said, replace the healthcare worker, but it's going to augment the ability of the healthcare worker to improve productivity. So and so with teachers, so along with so much also with sort of the non-banking financial corporation, credit assessments, and precision agriculture, and also in manufacturing, where we've seen some impacts of AI already. So I think the potential is enormous, and both Mansi and Shashank used to come back from these interviews that they had and discuss with a fair amount of enthusiasm the possibilities of AI. And I think it's appropriate that youngsters work on AI. I'm just telling you the results of the study, but it's the youngsters who actually have developed all these insights, and they feel that the impacts could be really profound. And the kind of impacts that we've seen are in cost reductions, the improvement in quality, in enhanced efficiency. And I think from the point of view of India, the implications, the social implications of AI are going to be enormous. And that is what is going to drive, I think, AI applications in India and scale them up. So as I said, I encourage all of you to look at the very good and very insightful examples that are in the report. There are examples of how AI can be used to predict water tables in places that are subject to drought, and how we can take care of that situation. How we can actually assess credit risk and how we can give out loans to SMEs using AI or digital assistance as it has become very common in the West. So I'm going to stop by just this last slide, which is what are the policy recommendations that flow from our report. I'm happy to say that only recently, I think last week, there was a report on non-personal data and the creation of some sort of a mechanism by which data, non-personal data, can be used for the public good and can also be exploited for commercial practice. I think creating a data market is absolutely essential, but also safeguarding individual data and getting user consent is also important. So a balance has to be created, and that is going to lead to the creation of a data market and the exploitation, positive exploitation of data, not only for commercial good, but also for the public good, also for the social sector. And therefore we say we must create a nodal agency, which is sort of coordinates across government agency, because there are multiple government agencies that are going to be involved. We must develop collaborative frameworks. We think AI sort of clusters are going to be important for us. If we are able to develop AI clusters, it will give us a leap, it will give us a platform to be able to exploit this technology. We must, as I said, develop an all-encompassing data strategy, because data is the lifeblood of AI systems. And one of the reasons why China, if you will, has taken a sort of a march or stolen a march on AI is because they have lots of data. I'm not saying we go the China way, but we develop safeguard, but also help develop a market in which data can be used both for public good as well as for commercial exploitation. We should address the skill gap, as Pramod has said in his introductory evocative remarks. We have to address the skill gap of AI and the governance challenges in AI, the ethical councils that have been suggested to be created in India. And I think it is absolutely essential that data training that happens in one data set, its applicability in another conditions, those are the sort of safeguards that we need to develop when we look at the predictive power of AI. But we must ensure that the predictions that AI makes are sensible and are reasonable and not unethical. And therefore, the ethical councils make a lot of sense. A lot of meat is available in the report. I encourage you to read it. And the final slide, the epilogue, which I'm going to read out to you, is that the analysis that was done here was done pre-COVID. And as Pramod has said, COVID has changed the situation so much. And different actors, different people have been able to do different things to try and address the challenges, economic challenges, financial challenges. And I think those are worthy of studying in a follow-up report, because if we thought that AI is going to break trend and spike, the probability that it will happen post-COVID, I think, has shot up even more, because there will be many more applications of data and many more applications of AI that will encourage faster diffusion across the economy. And therefore, we must be able to revisit, maybe in a few months or another year, the results that this study has shown, which are already, I think, very profound. Thank you all for listening to me. A big thanks to Pramod and to NASSCOM and to Google for supporting, and of course, the pillars of this report, Mansi and Shashank. Thank you very much.